All right, I've got my Bible here, and I'm ready to read to you absolutely every book of the Bible that was written by someone who had met Jesus.
Wow, this looks like a fun game. Here, I want to play too.
We can go ahead and skip the Hebrew Bible since Jesus wasn't alive when that was written, and go straight to the New Testament. You ready?
Okay, so let's open the Bible and we'll just fast forward to the first book that was written by somebody who at least spoke with Jesus, right? Okay, so let me go ahead and flip. Oh, okay, there's the Old Testament.
Not a single word.
And, yeah, we can go ahead and stop right there.
There is not one book of the Bible that was written by someone who had met Jesus.
Yeah, turns out Genesis, which is written by Moses, is definitely written by somebody who spoke with Jesus, because Moses spoke with the angel of the Lord right there in Exodus 3. And as we know, the angel of the Lord is the pre-incarnate Christ. The Son incarnates as Jesus. Therefore, Moses most definitely spoke with Jesus. And if you want evidence of that, Jesus claims that name for himself in many places. The one that I find to be the most convenient to go to is John 8:58, where he uses the same name that the angel uses in Exodus 3:14.
Yes, some of the Gospels are attributed to Jesus' disciples, but scholars agree that they didn't write them. They were written decades after Jesus' death. The earliest Gospel that we have in the New Testament is the Gospel of Mark, and it was probably written around 70 of the Common Era. The attribution of those Gospels to disciples didn't happen for many years. They also don't read like eyewitness accounts and don't even claim to have been written by the disciples.
The reasoning here is really quite funny. So this pastor says that the Gospels could not have been written by people who knew Jesus because they were written decades later. If in 3 decades this pastor wrote a book about his life, does that mean he wouldn't have known himself? Right? Let's say one of his parishioners in 30 years writes a book about him. Does that mean the parishioner didn't know him? No, of course not. Because, he says that Mark at the earliest was written in 70 AD, which is, I would argue, is written much earlier. The only reason he says that is he's accepting the liberal scholarly view that the Gospels were written later than the destruction of the temple because it records Jesus prophesying that the temple would be destroyed. However, that's not really an argument, that's assuming the conclusion. He believes that since these are written decades later, it couldn't have been written by eyewitnesses, which is confusing because that certainly could be. Right? I mean, if in 20 years I write a book about Josh, I still knew Josh. Right? I'm still an eyewitness to his life.
Paul's letters weren't written by someone who had met Jesus. Paul, by his own admission, had never met Jesus. And even that great narrative we have about Saul encountering the risen Christ on the road to Damascus is something that the author of Luke Acts, the same author wrote both the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts, it's something that he invented for the narrative. Paul never makes a mention of that, and surely if he had encountered the risen Christ, he would have mentioned it.
Paul never claims to have seen the risen Christ. He absolutely does. 1 Corinthians 15. Right? Paul says that Christ appeared to one untimely born. He's talking about himself. Right? Paul absolutely affirms that he has seen the risen Lord. But if you want extra biblical evidence, we have that too. You can go and look at the writings of Papias and Irenaeus, who both affirm that the authors of the New Testament Gospels are the actual authors, right? Like they are the eyewitnesses to the life of Jesus. This is absolute and utter nonsense. This man is clearly a heretic and not a Christian, and we should be running with our heads on fire away from him.